started to prove very difficult to resist. And so, whereas you had quite a bit of consolidation in the first part of the 2000s, in the second part you started to see expenditure ratios going up, and particularly in many countries, many social programs and large social programs that had been unreformed or only partially reformed were strengthened. You know, pensions were increased, other social benefits were increased. Certainly, you know, coming from very low bases with a lot of good intent, but certainly leading to a situation in which there was quite a bit of inflexibility added to expenditure systems. So it was not a surprise that when the crisis hit you saw revenues collapse quite precipitously across the board. You had initial development of deficits, in some cases very large deficits. Very few countries were able to put stimulus packages, basically only the oil exporters that had accumulated large reserves. But countries developed large deficits, and then they had to start dealing with the deficits themselves. And that's where we are at this point in time, having to deal with a very complex situation, because the nature of these expenditure increases during the last decade has resulted in very inflexible spending programs and very socially difficult programs to deal with. There are a lot of other wrinkles here. Clearly, in some parts of the region, the re-emergence of energy subsidies have added specific problems. In some other parts of the regions, there are still unfinished agendas on financial sector restructuring, etc. But I think that basically this is the picture that we are dealing with. So let me just give you a few pictures. And this is just to put the region in context. Unfortunately, as you see in this graph, Europe and Central Asia, you know, we'll see some differentiation, is the region of the world that had the worst fiscal outcome during the crisis in 2008, 2009, and then is projected to continue to be quite in need of financing, as the deficit is not expected to turn around. If you contrast that, for instance, with the Middle East, that also had a tremendous decline in their fiscal surplus, but was able to go back to a very comfortable situation. And if you compare it to Asia, for instance, where China is the dominant power there, that has restarted to grow at very large, very fast rates, and that is capable of maintaining fiscal resources that are just not feasible in this area. And this is confirmed, in fact, by the next slide, that really shows that whereas Europe and Central Asia had the worst economic performance, also the rebound is expected to be less than any other region in the world, and I believe that this data actually is most likely to be revised in a less optimistic fashion, given the possible ramification of the Greek crisis. So, as I was saying before the crisis, revenues were rising rapidly, spending almost as rapidly, fiscal balances were improving across the region, but budgeting and spending efficiency were not improving just as much. Here in this slide, what we've done is to try to break up the region in several sub-regions. And what I would like to draw your attention to This is the picture on the revenue side. It clearly shows that there was some good consolidation in the new EU members, a steady increase in revenues or GDP, but that there was also a substantial increase in revenues in what we call other CIS, which is really a part of the world that's dominated by Ukraine. Ukraine, in fact, saw starting from the year 2001-2002 to the year 2007, saw an increase in revenues of almost 7% of GDP over this period of time. And then other countries were in a similar situation. The oil exporting countries also saw increases in their revenues. The graph stops at 2007, and it already shows the effects of the high oil prices and what they was doing to the finances of Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and to a lesser extent Turkmenistan. Now, here the picture regarding spending is also quite interesting. It shows quite a bit of restraint in the EU 10 area and in Turkey, essentially. Turkey, particularly after the crisis of 2002, had to do quite a bit of consolidation. But again, quite a bit of an increase in expenditures in Ukraine and other countries of the CIS, and a substantial increase in expenditures in oil exporting CIS in again Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, particularly starting from the year 2005, which really marked the end of the consolidation in Russia after the crisis of 1998, 1998 and 1999. So the result is that fiscal balances got better. They were much better in Southeastern Europe and Turkey. Again, let's recall that Turkey went through the 2002 crisis and therefore had to adjust quite substantially. But much less improved. Well, some improvement in the EU 10 area, and then what is also interesting that the oil exporters had an improvement. Quite clearly, they increased both revenues and expenditures. So taking it not only reducing their deficits, but also creating more, if you like, fiscal space for their own expenditure. And the same thing for Ukraine and the other countries of the CIS. Here we have some indicators of quality of fiscal policies, but in the interest of time, I will skip this. Let's go then to what happens in the crisis. The picture is quite familiar. What is actually interesting here is that the point that I was trying to make, that deficits really appeared across the board. It certainly has comparators, East Asia and Pacific and the Latin America region. Deficits appeared across the board, but it was only in the oil exporting exporting countries that the deficit was compounded not just by the automatic stabilizers, which in this case is really mostly an increase in a decrease in revenues due to the crisis, but also by large packages, which, as you probably know, were as large as 6% of GDP in the case of Kazakhstan, close to 5% of GDP in the case